I found out my real mother died fighting for me, and my family hid everything. I used to think the worst kind of abuse was the loud kind. Screaming, hitting, doors slammed off hinges. What I've come to realize is that silence can be just as violent. The kind that stretches across a dinner table like a noose. That grows over years like mold in a place where no one opens the curtains. That's the house I grew up in. My name's Jordan. I'm 23 now. But this started when I was 16, sitting at our kitchen table watching my parents fawn over my older brother Evan, the golden one. I always knew I didn't belong, but I couldn't articulate why. It wasn't that they were outwardly cruel. They never hit me, never yelled much. They just didn't see me. At least not in the way that mattered. My mom would laugh at Evan's jokes, ask about his football practice, his grades, his college prospects. When I came home with a B+ in calculus after pulling 3 all-nighters, barely a nod. At dinner, Evan always got the last piece of meat. He got the car keys without asking. I had to text to request milk money. I once got sick on my birthday and spent the whole day in bed. No one checked on me. Evan forgot, and my parents just assumed I was being dramatic. I didn't even get a cake. I told myself it was fine. It had always been this way. But it was the summer before senior year when everything changed. The day I realized just how deeply I'd been lied to. Evan had already graduated. They were busy preparing for his dorm move, measuring curtains, making care packages, planning a whole weekend road trip to drop him off. I was working part-time at a bookstore, saving for a clunky secondhand bike, so I wouldn't have to keep walking 4 miles to school. I got off work early one day and walked into the kitchen to see the 3 of them laughing about something. Full volume joy. I froze in the doorway. My mom looked at me like I'd tracked dirt in. Did you need something? I just stood there for a second. I got off early. I was just coming to say hi. We're in the middle of something, she said, voice clipped. No warmth. No invitation. No, how was your day? Just dismissal. I went to my room and sat there staring at my wall for 2 hours. And then, without knowing why, I opened the hallway cabinet, the one where they kept all the important papers. I'd never snooped before, but something was pulling at me, hard and deep, like a current I couldn't see. Inside were labeled folders, taxes, insurance, house deed. Then one that said simply, Jordan. I opened it. Inside were medical records, school forms, and one document that didn't belong. Temporary Guardianship Agreement, 2006. Signed by a woman named Danielle Rivera. My name was listed beneath hers. And beside it, under Guardians Assigned, were my parents' names. I felt like the floor fell out beneath me. Danielle Rivera. I'd never heard the name in my life. But I read the form 10 times, trying to make it mean something else. The date was from when I was 2. The reason listed? Temporary medical hardship and instability. I kept digging. Found another form. This one from a court hearing. Danielle had requested custody again in 2007. It had been denied. Then nothing. The woman I'd called Mom for as long as I could remember wasn't. And no one had ever told me. I didn't sleep that night. The name Danielle Rivera burned into my brain. I whispered it out loud just to feel it in my mouth. I had no memory of her. Not even a flicker. I was 2 years old when she signed those papers, and apparently 3 when she tried to get me back. But the more I said her name, the more I felt something strange settle in my chest, like something that had always been missing just quietly snapped into place. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. I reshelved the same book 3 times. I wrote the name Danielle Rivera on a piece of scrap paper and stuffed it in my pocket like it was some kind of clue from a detective movie. I don't know what I expected to find, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. So when I got home, I told my parents I had a project to work on and locked myself in my room. I started digging. It wasn't easy. There are a lot of Danielle Riveras in the world. But once I filtered by state, then narrowed by county, then got smart enough to check archived newspapers instead of Facebook, I found something. It was a short obituary from 2007. Danielle Rivera, 27, passed away in a car accident on November 14th. Survived by her sister, Maria Rivera. That was it. No mention of a child. Of me. I stared at it for a long time. My hands shook. I couldn't explain why. This wasn't some movie twist with a happy ending. It was a brick wall. She was dead. And they never told me. And what ate at me worse was that she didn't just disappear. She died when I was 3. The same year she tried to get custody. She didn't give me up, like I was probably meant to believe. She died fighting to get me back. That night, I couldn't look my parents in the eye. I ate dinner in silence while Evan recapped some story about a campus party, and my mom handed him a plate like he was royalty. I looked at my dad, wondered what kind of man lets a kid grow up thinking no one ever wanted him. The next day, I found Maria Rivera. She worked as a pediatric nurse 2 towns over. There was a staff directory on her hospital's website, complete with a smiling photo, short curly hair, dark eyes, a wide face with a kindness to it that made my throat catch. She looked a little like me. Or maybe I just wanted her to. I created a burner email and wrote, "Hi, you don't know me, but I think you might have known my mother. Her name was Danielle Rivera. I believe I may be her son." I stared at the message for 5 minutes before hitting send. I didn't know what I expected. Definitely not a reply an hour later. "Jordan? Oh my God. Please tell me this is real. I've been looking for you for over a decade." I froze. Read it 3 times. Then replied. "We exchanged messages all night. She told me she'd tried to keep in touch after Danielle's death, but was cut off. She said she'd even tried to file for visitation, but my legal guardians blocked her at every turn. She wasn't rich, and the legal costs became impossible. She eventually gave up. I asked her if Danielle really tried to get custody back. Every cent your mother had went into that fight. She was trying to get clean, stable, everything. She wanted you more than anything. She was coming back from a custody hearing the day she died. That's where she was driving from when the drunk driver hit her." I felt sick. And more than that, I felt something break in me that I hadn't known was still intact. For so many years I believed, quietly, deeply, that I was hard to love, that I was a burden someone had reluctantly carried. But suddenly the version of me I'd internalized shattered. Because someone had loved me. Someone had fought for me. And that someone had been erased. Maria asked to meet in person. I said yes. We met at a little cafe halfway between her town and mine. She brought photos, letters, a stuffed tiger I apparently carried everywhere as a baby. She cried when she saw me. I didn't cry, not at first. I was too stunned. But then she pulled out a picture of Danielle holding me on her lap, grinning with her whole face, and I broke. I'd never seen that woman in my life. But I knew her. I felt her. She looked like me. Same eyes. Same messy hair. Same crooked smile. And she was looking at me in that photo like I was her entire world. I called in sick for the rest of the week. Every day, I went to Maria's place after she got off work, and we just talked. She told me about Danielle's wild streak, how she dropped out of college, how she struggled but never stopped trying, how she wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but how she never gave up on me. I asked why my dad took me. Maria went quiet, then said, "Danielle told me your dad never wanted to be a father. She said when she got pregnant, he pressured her to terminate. She said when she refused, he walked out, came back later with a new girlfriend and money. And when Danielle got sick, he offered to help, but only if she gave him full control. She thought it was temporary. I could barely breathe. After she died, I tried to call. I begged them to let me see you. I got a cease and desist letter within a week. I went home from Maria's house that night with the stuffed tiger clutched to my chest like I was 5 again. I didn't speak to anyone when I walked through the door. Not my mom, not my dad, not Evan, who was home for fall break and loudly recapping a party to someone on speakerphone. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and stared at that photo of Danielle and me on Maria's phone until I fell asleep. The next morning, I confronted them. I waited until Evan left. Didn't want his smug commentary in the room. My mom was reading some lifestyle blog on her tablet while Dad worked on a crossword. They looked up when I entered the kitchen. That heavy air, the usual kind that signaled I was either in trouble or invisible, settled in again. I held up a printout of Danielle's obituary and the custody hearing record I'd found. Why didn't you ever tell me she existed? My mother's face went pale in a way I'd never seen before. Dad blinked once. Just once. Then slowly folded his crossword and set it on the table. "Where did you find that?" he asked calmly. "Does it matter?" Silence. Mom closed her tablet and folded her arms. "She was unstable," she said. "We did what was best." "Best for who?" I asked. "For me? Or for you?" "She had a record," she said. "She was in and out of treatment. You needed structure, not chaos. She died fighting to get me back." My dad let out a long sigh. "She died in a car accident. That's not on us. You erased her. You didn't even let her sister see me. You made me think I wasn't wanted by anyone. She would have ruined you," my mother snapped. "You think your life would have been better with some broke addict in a 1-bedroom apartment. It would have been better with someone who wanted me." I didn't mean to yell, but I did. My voice shook the walls, and something inside me cracked wide open. Years of quiet, of swallowing pain, of accepting crumbs like they were gourmet. It all poured out. You let me grow up thinking I was hard to love, that I was just the weird kid you had to deal with while Evan got to be your son. You fed me lies, and when I finally found the truth, all you care about is how you look. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. My father looked like he'd aged 5 years in 1 minute. She was a mistake, he said softly. I stepped back like he'd slapped me. She gave me everything she had, and you still call her that? He said nothing. I left. Maria took me in that night. She insisted. Her apartment was small, but warm, real. I slept on her couch and felt safer there than I ever had in the house I grew up in. The next day, I filed for legal emancipation. I was still technically 17, but with supporting documents, income from my part-time job, and Maria's sworn statement, the process moved forward quickly. My parents didn't fight it. I changed schools, finished senior year across town. My GPA survived the chaos. I graduated early. College came next, scholarship, dorm life, part-time work to pay for books. It was hard, but it was mine. They never reached out. Evan blocked me on everything after I posted a picture of Danielle on Instagram with the caption, "She never got to raise me, but I'll carry her name with pride." It got 2 likes. Maria printed it out and put it on her fridge. 3 years passed. I don't know how else to describe them except to say they were like watching colors return to the world after living in grayscale. It wasn't perfect. I had panic attacks the first few times I walked past families at graduation parties or saw father-son duos throwing a football in the park. But I was also healing. Maria never treated me like a replacement. She treated me like a person. She told me stories about Danielle constantly, some sweet, some stupid, some so vivid I felt like I could smell the cigarette smoke and cheap lip gloss she used to wear. She gave me photos, recipes, a copy of the first poem Danielle ever published in a local paper. I started to write again, really write. The kind of writing I hadn't done since I was 12, and my mom told me, no one makes a living out of sad scribbles. It didn't matter if I made money. It mattered that I could breathe through the pen. I got an internship at a nonprofit that supported youth transitioning out of foster care. Irony, I guess. It turned into a full-time job after college. Eventually, I was in charge of organizing creative workshops and building connections between survivors of childhood trauma and the communities they were trying to trust again. That's what I was doing the day I got the letter. It was from my mother, the woman who raised me. I hadn't heard from her since the emancipation hearing. I figured she'd written me off, same as Evan. But this letter was short and handwritten in slanted cursive I recognized from old birthday cards. Your father is dying. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He doesn't have long. I thought you should know. He wants to see you. Claire. Claire. Not Mom. Just her name. I stared at the letter for what felt like hours. Part of me wanted to burn it. Another part, the part that had spent years starving for closure, told me to go. I don't know what I expected when I walked into that hospital room. He looked small. Smaller than I remembered. His face was sunken, his arms pale. He had an oxygen tube in his nose and an untouched tray of hospital food on his lap. He looked up slowly and blinked like he wasn't sure I was real. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said. I almost didn't. He nodded. That's fair. There was a long silence. Then he said, I made a lot of mistakes. You think? He let out a breath, not quite a laugh. You look like her. I hated that about you. I saw her in your face every day and didn't know how to love you without remembering what I lost. I didn't say anything. He went on. But you weren't her. You were you. And I missed that. I missed you. You didn't miss me. You erased me. He nodded slowly. I know. There was no tearful apology. No sudden confession that made everything better. Just a broken man trying to make peace with his conscience. I stood up to leave. Before I walked out, he said, I'm sorry. I paused, then said, she was stronger than you ever gave her credit for. He didn't look at me again. I walked out. He died 6 days later. I didn't go to the funeral. Maria brought flowers to Danielle's grave that day. I went with her. We brought a paper lantern and lit it just after sunset. I wrote one thing on it before we let it rise into the air. She found me. 6 months after my father's death, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a small wooden box with a tarnished metal latch and a yellowing envelope on top. My name was written in delicate cursive, not my mother's, not Claire's. The handwriting looked familiar, though. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter. From my father. Apparently, he wrote it in hospice care, and a nurse promised to mail it after his passing. It was short, just one page, and still managed to shake me like nothing else. Jordan, I never deserved your forgiveness. I don't ask for it now. I only want you to know something I never had the courage to tell you face to face. When Danielle died, I was relieved. It's a horrible thing to admit, but I didn't believe I was capable of raising a child with someone like her. I thought I was saving you from chaos. I told myself lies until I believed them. But the truth is, she was a better person than I ever was. You are more hers than mine, and that is a gift. In the box is something she wanted you to have when you were older. Maria gave it to us after her death. We hid it. I hid it. I'm sorry, James. I read it twice. My hands trembled. Then I opened the box. Inside was a tattered composition notebook, its cover held together with clear tape and prayer. On the front, in fading pink ink, to Jordan, someday, when you're old enough. The first page was a letter, dated just 2 months before her death. Hey baby, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. And if I didn't, I'm so sorry. Not because I left, because I know that's not my fault, but because I didn't get to see the person you grew up to be. But I have to believe you're out there, breathing and becoming and surviving even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. You're so loved. I loved you when you threw your mashed peas at me. When you cried at 3 a.m. because the rain was too loud. When you fell asleep curled up next to that mangy stuffed tiger with one ear. You saved me. Every damn day. I hope you find someone who sees you like I did, like the whole world is inside you. Never let them tell you who you are. You were never a burden. You were my beginning. Love. Mom. I collapsed onto the floor, pressing the pages to my chest like they could fill the hole I still carried. That night, Maria and I stayed up going through the entire journal. It was filled with stories of my first steps, my first tantrum, jokes I told as a toddler, silly drawings she'd made of me as a superhero. There were pages where she just wrote how afraid she was, that she'd never get me back, that I'd forget her, that I'd grow up thinking I was unlovable. I remembered every time I sat alone on the edge of the school field while Evan's friends jeered from a distance. Every time Claire told me to toughen up when I cried. Every report card she barely glanced at. Every insult cloaked as advice. This woman, this stranger who had died trying to hold on to me, had loved me more in 100 scribbled pages than the people who raised me had in nearly 2 decades. I never showed Claire the letter. I never told Evan. Let them live in the world they built. I had my mother now, not in body, but in truth, in memory, in every word she left behind. That year, I started speaking publicly at youth outreach events. I told my story, carefully, cautiously, protecting names but not truths. I became someone who didn't just survive, but someone who testified. Eventually, I published a memoir. I included Danielle's letter, her drawings, even a scan of the tiger with one ear. It was raw, maybe too raw, but it was honest. And that made it matter. The book did well. I got letters from strangers who said they finally felt seen. Kids who were adopted and didn't know their past. Adults who never got the apology I did. Some of them just wrote to say, "Me too." Maria cried when I gave her the first printed copy. We both did. Years later, I married someone who didn't flinch when I said, "I have a complicated family." Someone who sat with me in the dark when old ghosts came knocking. We named our daughter Danielle, and she sleeps with a one-eared tiger clutched tight to her chest.